Hi, it's Tom from bknutrition.com, and today I want to talk about willpower and having stronger willpower, controlling your cravings with regard to snacking, and helping you to develop a strength when you're stressed and you get these urges to eat chocolates, donuts, ice cream, etc. I want to talk about how to control that and how to work with your brain to make sure that you reduce these instances of overeating, so that when you are trying to do a weight loss plan or a fat loss plan, you can actually get the results you want without messing it all up with an eating binge. So to understand why willpower happens, we need to understand that there are three essential brains in your brain makeup. Now, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a brain surgeon, and I am aware that there are lots of different systems in the brain and people talk about them. This is a designed to give you an overview of why things happen in your brain. It's not a walkthrough of the brain's workings. So the three brains I identify in my book, and also if you're interested in this topic, you might want to read a book called The Chimp Paradox by Professor Stephen Peters. He goes into this a lot deeper. So the three brains that we need to be aware of when we're trying to lose weight or lose body fat are the muncher brain, which controls your snacking cravings and your instinctual behavior. The saviour brain, which is the inner voice of reason, which is your logical brain. That's the brain you're normally in everyday life. If you haven't got any emotions, if you're just plodding along in your everyday life, you're normally in your logical brain. And then we have the robot brain, and the robot brain controls automatic actions. So an automatic action would be riding a bike or driving a car or opening a door, something like that. Something you've done so many times that you don't even have to think about doing it. Your body, your brain does it automatically. Now, what is interesting about the robot brain is it can be programmed with habits. So when we're talking about building good habits, building good systems, and I've talked in other videos about how you must do a habit, say 1,000 times or whatever, to make sure that it's programmed into your brain. So that's the first thing you do. When we're talking about programming the systems, we're talking about programming the robot brain, the automatic actions brain. So when you get up in the morning and you make your breakfast, you want the automatic thing to be thinking about your maybe lean protein, low calorie breakfast rather than a greasy fry up. Or you want to be thinking about taking the steps instead of taking the lift. That's an automatic action that you make. So we want to be programming our brain, our robot brain, with these automatic actions, these good habits. However, the robot brain can also be programmed with bad habits, and most of us have got pre-programmed bad habits, which we've had for life. And when I talk about habits in my other videos, I also say that you can't actually eliminate a bad habit from your brain. It's always going to be there as a fallback mechanism. So when we're trying to build good habits to change from our bad habit, what we need to be doing is making the good habit a little bit more easier to do, more simple to do, and something which is more appealing to do. So that's the automatic actions. Now I'll talk about the willpower. That's the purpose of the video. The willpower is something that we refer to, and actually what we're talking about is our logical brain trying to override our instinctual brain. So we've got the muncher brain, which is our snacking brain. It's the brain that wakes up and tells us to eat cookies when we're not hungry. And we have our saviour, which is our logical brain, which is the brain saying, no, I want to eat within my diet because I want to lose weight. Now, the problem here is that the muncher, the instinctual brain, is a lot stronger. The drive from that brain is a lot stronger than your logical brain. And the reason is because the logical brain processes information and then says, right, all the information's come in, that's the decision I'm going to make. The instinctual, the muncher brain doesn't do that. What happens is it sees a cue, like a stimulus, and goes, right, that's what I'm going to do. It doesn't think about the consequences, it just does it. Now, we've all been at the mercy of this type of action. When something upsets us, we have a knee-jerk reaction to do it. And that is especially true when we're talking about eating. So a good thing here is, a good example is that people will get stressed. The first thing they think about is eating some chocolate. And then that's a muncher brain response, because the logical brain would go, no, we don't need chocolate. If we want to eat, we'll have one of our low fat calorie meals. But the muncher brains, no, we want to eat chocolate. And the purpose of the muncher, the instinctual brain, is to keep you happy. It's not an enemy that you have to work against. It's actually your friend. It's trying to make you happy by making you eat chocolate because it senses that you're unhappy from a stressful situation, and it knows initially eating chocolate will make you feel better. However, it doesn't see the consequences down the line where you've eaten the chocolate and the muncher brain goes back to sleep, and then T-Vor's like, oh, why do I eat that chocolate? So this is why we don't want to be thinking about willpower and resisting our brain, because what we're trying to do essentially is resist ourselves, and that's always going to be a losing battle. And the muncher, the instinctual brain, is a lot stronger. The drive to do the actions is a lot stronger than your logical brain. And the reason for that is that the muncher brain is driven by a hormone called dopamine. Now, dopamine it's got a bad rap when people talk about being addicted to things, because dopamine is released when you have a pleasurable sensation. So, say for example, gambling, chocolate, for example, they all release dopamine. Foods that you like, when you eat them, release dopamine in your brain as a reward. It's a reward sensation. Oh, that's a really nice thing. I like that. And people have this thing about dopamine is addictive. Sugar is as addictive as cocaine, because sugar gives a dopamine response, as does cocaine. But it's not the same thing. You don't get addicted to sugar. You get addicted to the sensation you get from it. Otherwise, people who were addicted to sugar would be going out buying bags of sugar and doing a line off the counter rather than eating donuts and sweets, because sugar is not the main constituent of donuts and sweets. The actual dopamine hit you get from food is a combination of sugar, fat, not really protein, sugar and fat, and salt. And those things give you that drive. Now, what the muncher, the instinctual brain, knows is that if you have certain foods, and we all have foods that trigger different dopamine responses. So, for example, for me, hobnobs are a real dopamine hit. If I eat a hobnob, I'll have such a pleasurable response from that I'll probably eat the whole packet, and that's my trigger food. That's the trigger food for me. However, if I eat a bourbon biscuit, I'll enjoy one bourbon biscuit. I won't enjoy 2 or 3. So while a biscuit, a bourbon biscuit, will give me a sense of reward, it's not something that triggers me. And that's important to remember when we're identifying foods that we want to maybe avoid on our diet or restrict on our diet, knowing the foods that are triggers for us, that give us that massive dopamine hit. So the muncher knows what those foods are, so that when you have a stressful situation, the first thing it thinks of is, how can I make Tom happy but very, very quickly? And the response will be, let's go and eat some hobnobs, or let's go and eat some Krispy Kremes, or let's go and eat some Pringles, that sort of thing. Those sorts of things, that is, for me, will give me a high sense of pleasure, and also it's something that I have a difficulty stopping eating. So this is what you've got to think about, is that when you're trying to resist, you're trying to actually resist your own brain trying to make you happy, and that's not going to work. You can resist it for a while. We can always resist for a little while, but if that cue continues to come, as in we continue to be stressed, or we continue to see the food in front of us, then we're going to have a very hard time long term resisting it. And now an example would be, I have a few clients who I've worked with in the past, and in their office they have tables laden out with donuts and cookies and stuff like that. One of my clients even had their office had a name for it. It was called the diabetes table, and obviously they knew all these things on there weren't good for them to eat in abundance, but they still had this table laid out with all these donuts and crisps and cookies and whatever else. And you think about it, someone who's trying to lose weight, and they're sat in an office and they're on a calorie restricted diet, a calorie deficit diet, so they're going to be a little bit hungry because of that, and all day they're looking at a table full of high calorie, high reward foods. They might be able to resist it if they're not that hungry, but if they've had a stressful day, if they've had a tiring day, or they've had that much sleep, and they wake up and they're not that making those good decisions, because sleep can reduce the decision making ability. And then all of a sudden you see those things, and then that is constantly in front of you. You're constantly getting that cue through the day of all these nice sweet treats, and then all you need is a stressful situation to wake up your munch brain to say, wow, we're stressed now, let's go and eat some of that food, and you're straight over there eating the biscuits or whatever. So it's important to remember that you can control your eating and snacking cravings temporarily or for a short time. If the cue continues to present itself, you're going to have a harder time of that. It's going to be very, very difficult. Now, there's a lot to talk about here, and I could go on for a long time. But I am going to do some other videos with regard to controlling those sort of snacking cues and snacking cravings. But this video is about willpower, and so we're thinking about how can we control our snacking cravings, because what we don't want to do, we don't want to give in every single time, because that's going to be depressing, and obviously we're not going to lose weight in the long term if you always give in to the willpower. But also we don't want to be stressing ourselves out even more by putting ourselves in a situation where we're fighting ourselves, because that might in turn lead to a bigger binge. So the technique I use with clients to help this out is there's something called working with your brain. Now the muncher brain is instinctual in nature, but it is your brain, and you can essentially talk to it to maybe negotiate a settlement rather than just giving in. So rather than fighting, so we don't have our logical brain fighting our muncher brain, which will always result, if the battle continues, in the muncher brain winning and us giving in to the cravings, because we always give in to our willpower, our cravings every now and again. If the cue is constant, if we remove the cue, then it's actually a lot easier, because we after a while the initial sensation of, oh, I want that donut, I want that, will go. But if it's still there, or the stress persists, we're still going to get that cue to overeat, and so the battle continues, and eventually our logical brain will give up, and we'll go into that snacking. So what we want to do instead is recognize that this might happen, and this we might get in stressful situations in the day, and we want to present ourselves with something called an if this then scenario. So if, for example, if we are stressed and we want to eat a load of cookies, then we will have maybe an alternate snack that we can have. So my example with hobnobs, where if I eat a whole pack of hobnobs, if I eat one hobnob, I'll eat a whole pack. Then I don't want to be doing that. So I don't want to be even eating one hobnob, which is what the snacking cue that my brain will give me. However, if I say have a couple of bourbon biscuits, I will still get pleasure from doing that, but it's not something that's going to drive me to eat the whole packet. So it satisfies the you need to eat something to cheer you up craving, and then the muncher brain goes back to sleep. But what you've done is control, or I would say negotiate a settlement with your muncher brain to eat that food, which will then placate it. It goes back to sleep because it's made you feel happy, and so its job is done, and then your logical brain can take over again. Now, this is something that will be unique to you. You've got to think about stressful situations that are going to occur, and how you can essentially negotiate with your brain to make sure that you can, while you want to, sometimes you can obviously resist it, but if it comes to the point where you're thinking, I'm going to lose this battle, then what you want to be thinking of is, like, how can I reach a compromise, rather than how can I just lay down and let the floods come over and have a ton of food pumped into me. So and then this will then give you more confidence and more control, and your ability to negotiate, and also your willpower in a sense will strengthen, because what we're doing now, we're working with our brains, we're not working against it. So you'll have to think about situations that happen in your life, and then the snacking cues that you get, and how you can potentially come to a bartering arrangement with your brain to maybe have something else instead of the food it's craving you. But here's the thing, if you're going to do this, you have to have those foods ready. You have to have them there ready to eat, because if you have a conversation with your brain, say the diabetes table example, so the stressful cue happens and the table's there, and you say, oh no, what I'll do is I'll go out to the shop and have this. 9 times out of 10 that won't happen, because the easiest way to solve the issue for your muncher brain is to eat off the diabetes table, the stuff that's right in front of you. That's the path of least resistance, and that's the path our brain will go to. So you need to have that snack in front of you on your desk or in your bag next to your desk. So if you have a stressful situation, you've got next to you your, let's say, countermeasures snack that you can get out and eat, so that you're giving that your munchie brain that satisfaction of having something treaty, having something nice and sweet, so that you take away that craving, and then you can look at the diabetes table easily enough because you've not got that craving anymore. So that is willpower, and how to control your willpower rather than working against your brain and trying to resist for as long as possible. You can put up a fight for a certain amount of time if the cue is very small, and if the cue is removed from your vision and from your thoughts quite quickly. Now, some people say, one of my clients, they're on Fridays, they had a what they call Fat Fridays. So they had say pizzas or McDonald's or something that was brought in every single Friday. And what we did initially was he had a small pizza or a small McDonald's. So he was reducing the amount that he was having, but he was still enjoying the social situation. So his coping was to have half a pizza and he would throw the rest away, so he didn't have that continued cue. And pizza wasn't a trigger food for him, so he was okay with that. Long term, what he actually did was to then go for a walk. So he removed himself from the situation rather than the cue being right there in front of him. So there's two options there for you to think about if that goes on in your office. You can either have a smaller option so you can enjoy the social environment, or you can remove yourself from the situation, go for a walk or whatever, but you must remove the cue or the sensation. Otherwise, if you just sit there while everyone else is eating pizzas and you're not eating pizza, eventually you're going to crack on that and you're going to go and eat something. And if and what will happen is, if they've eaten all the pizzas and you haven't got anything, then in your mind you'll have now a mission to go and get a ton of food. So you're essentially going to go in for a bigger binge. So you must think about either removing the cue from your sight, reducing the impact of it, and maybe negotiating with your brain, as in having a snack ready that you can have instead of that bigger calorie snack or calorie meal, so you can actually keep within your diet plan. Now, this is quite easy to do if you've worked out your calorie deficit and you've worked out your calories. So there is another video that I've done, and it talks about allocating calories into your day. So all you need to do is to allocate a certain amount of snacks or calories to that incident. So if you put aside, say, 300 calories a day for any of those incidents that come up, then you know that you can have those 300 calories or whatever you've allocated, and you're still within your calorie deficit. So that's really important if you plan ahead for these situations to come up. Now, what happens is, if that situation doesn't come up in the day, well, you save 300 calories then, or you can eat it from another meal if you want to, or you can just save it and have a bigger calorie deficit, or you can save those 300 calories up each day, so that if you have a bigger snacking craving, you can have them later on. So there's lots of ways you can do it without actually going over your calorie amount for the day. So that'll be planning ahead. Or what you can do is, if, for example, you do have a bit of a binge, what you can say is, right, well, I've had, say, 500 calories today, which wasn't on my plan. What I'll do over the next 5 days is reduce my calories by 100 calories a day, for example, so that over on average you've balanced out those calories. But it's important that you don't try and resist the eating sensation for very long. If it's persisting and if you're starting to grow, you need to maybe do some sort of negotiation with your munchie brain and have something to eat rather than trying to resist it. I know some coaches will say, no, you've got to suck it up and you've got to take the pain or whatever. Believe me, I've done bodybuilding shows where I've tried to suck it up and I've tried to do that, and eventually what happens is you do come to a point where you just go binging. Case in point, I ate all my daughter's Easter eggs one year. So I was resisting my will, but I was using my willpower to resist cravings. I was on a very low calorie diet. I was training twice a day, doing cardio twice a day. I was so hungry, and I was resisting for ages. And all it took was one stressful situation in the day, and I was at home by myself, and I ate all my daughter's Easter eggs. And that was like probably about 2,000 calories worth of food within about 10 minutes. So yeah, I broke badly, and this is not uncommon for people on extreme diets to do this. And then afterwards, obviously, I felt very guilty. At the time, I didn't know about 3 brains and everything else. I felt really guilty. So I had to then, over the next couple of days, do more cardio, more training to offset the calories. So it's not a good idea to resist for as long as possible. Yeah, you need to resist for a little bit to build up your strength and your willpower, but eventually you're going to have to make a decision. Am I going to keep on trying to resist, but this cue's still there and I'm probably going to break, or do I have a bartering, do I have a negotiation with my muncher brain to say, well, I have this instead of this big binge you want me to have, and that will give me the sweet sensation, that will give me the pleasure, and then you can go back to sleep, and you're having this internal monologue with yourself, and I would say 9 times out of 10 that does work, and you can get away with eating slightly less of a snack rather than having a massive binge, and you'll still feel okay. So that is controlling willpower, or working with your brain in a nutshell. There is so much more on this topic, and it would take a long video to go into it, which is why I wrote a book on it. So if you want to read a bit more about this and about dopamine and all the other triggers that come into play here, please, you can go and get my book from Amazon. It's called Target Lean. Just buy it on Amazon. It's about 12 quid, or it's like, I think 4 quid on Kindle, something like that. And that will give you more information, which you can read to your heart's content. Okay, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like it. If you think someone can benefit from it, please share. And I'll see you on the next video. Thanks a lot.